Hello, friends, and welcome to the Books of the Book. We are studying the book of Daniel, and we are in Daniel chapter 2. My name is James Rafferty.
And I'm Ty Gibson. James is co-host for this series of programs on the book of Daniel. We just love the book of Daniel, James, because it is not only a prophetic book that points forward to events that pertain to the end of human history, which ushers in the second coming of Jesus and that glorious period into the future that we all long for. But we love the book of Daniel because it is a book that presents vital principles for character development, vital principles to guide our lives spiritually and to have a relationship with God. It is a book that chronicles the story of Daniel's relationship with God. And it is a book that chronicles the relationship of King Nebuchadnezzar with God, a relationship that King Nebuchadnezzar at first didn't even know he was having. But God was pursuing him and finally got this king's attention, and Nebuchadnezzar became a worshiper of the true God of heaven.
And yeah, it is a book that shows us the heart of God and shows us how to have this relationship with God. And we see that especially now as we move into Daniel chapter 2. We've begun to see a picture of God right here in Daniel 1. As we move to Daniel chapter 2, this picture begins to unfold. We looked at in the first chapter the idea that God was going into captivity with his people. He was afflicted by their afflictions, and he was humbling himself before this heathen monarch, allowing himself to be small in the sight of this ruler. And now in Daniel chapter 2, we have Nebuchadnezzar in the second year of his reign. It says in verse 1 of Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and in this dream he is troubled, so much so that he wakes up, perhaps in a cold sweat. He wakes up in the middle of this dream, but he can't remember what he dreamed. Now, here's just the picture of it. We're going to find out that this dream is from God. We're going to find out that Nebuchadnezzar was given this dream by divine revelation. We're also going to find out that the reason why he couldn't remember it is also from God. God gives Nebuchadnezzar a dream that he can't remember. What is the purpose? The purpose is God is seeking to awaken Nebuchadnezzar to his need of something more than just these gods of idol and stone and wood. Yeah,
there are two things going on here. As we said in the previous program in Daniel chapter 1, the whole book of Daniel runs along two tracks, if you will. There's the storyline of Daniel's experience as a captive in Babylon and the story of Nebuchadnezzar's conversion. And then there are the prophecies that unfold. Well, Daniel chapter 2 reveals that there are two things that are taking place here. We tend to see that Daniel chapter 2 is just revealing world history in advance, and it is. But not only is world history in advance coming to our attention in the prophecy of Daniel 2, God is also in the process of getting Nebuchadnezzar's attention, speaking to him. So he's working for the conversion of King Nebuchadnezzar, and simultaneously he is giving a prophecy to the world and all who will read, down to our very day, who can read this prophecy and learn these vital truths. I think it's incredible that God is pursuing this king in this manner.
Now, most people in the world, I won't say most people because I don't know most people. I'm not judge. I don't know most people. But a lot of people in this world have no need of God. Nebuchadnezzar has no need of God.
Or so he thinks.
He is a ruler with absolute power, and he has all the wealth that money can buy. He has no need of God. He has a dream. Can't remember the dream, but it really troubles him. You ever had a bad dream and you wake up and you're just troubled?
Right.
And perhaps even you can't remember, but you feel it's significant. He has a dream. He can't remember the dream. He knows it's significant. He knows it is. It troubles him, and he calls for all of his wise men. They all come in, and he basically tells them, I've had a dream, and I want you to tell me what it is. And they cannot do it.
Well, they have no idea what his dream was, of course.
So here is a man who is used to getting his way, a man who has everything at his fingertips that he needs, and now he has a need for something that's really troubling him, and no one can deliver his need. There is no one in his kingdom that can take care of his need.
Or so he thinks, and so he calls all the wise men before him, assuming that in their great Babylonian education and wisdom and the fact that they are in touch with Babylonian gods, he assumes that an answer is forthcoming. But they repeatedly tell him, King, tell us the dream, we'll tell you the interpretation. The king says, no, you tell me the dream so I know that the interpretation that you give me is actually true. Nobody can help him in the Babylonian realm of knowledge, in the Babylonian realm of religion and spirituality. But then there's that captive Daniel, and he's there behind the scenes, and he's not brought in at first. He's not one of the wise men that are brought before the king at this point. He is pursuing his education, his 3-year university education that Nebuchadnezzar has plugged him into.
Absolutely. Nebuchadnezzar was giving him 3 years, according to Daniel 1, verse 5, that he would be nourished, provided for, educated, and then he would come in at the end of that time and he would be tested. But going back to your point, Ty, and it's a powerful one, Nebuchadnezzar is now feeling his need.
Yes.
Nebuchadnezzar is recognizing, just a little bit, that all the power in the world and all the money in the world and all the education of the world cannot satisfy our deepest needs. This is the message in Daniel chapter 2. It doesn't matter how powerful you are, it doesn't matter how educated you are, it doesn't matter how rich you are, none of that can satisfy your deepest need. And God is revealing this to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
He's showing this to Nebuchadnezzar through a dream. Through a dream. And Nebuchadnezzar, he's not getting it yet, of course. He's upset. He's mad.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a king who's throwing a temper tantrum. Here is someone who's used to getting his way, and he is upset. And so what does he do? He sends out a decree, all the wise men of Babylon, you're dead.
Yes. Yes.
You are going to be killed by morning.
And so this news comes, of course, to Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because those who are commissioned to take the lives of all the wise men show up at their place of living, and they say to them, you know, we've got to execute all the wise men of Babylon, and you're among them. And Daniel knows that his God is a revealer of secrets, that his God can in fact give not only the dream, but the interpretation of the dream. This is incredible. Daniel presupposes that God is able to solve this problem. He believes that the Lord can and will intervene, so he calls upon God in prayer with his friends that God in mercy will intervene.
You know, it's really interesting. Don't you think that Daniel probably thought, God has a purpose in sending me to Babylon. God has a purpose in everything that's happening here. It looks bad, but God has a purpose. And then when this decree comes forth, rather than being afraid, because he's in this 3 years of training, he's not really part of the wise men yet. He's in this 3 years of training, so he says, when this decree comes forth, he says, could this be it? Could this be it? And he's not really so much afraid of the decree, because in his heart, he knows God has a purpose. And so rather than saying, oh no, and getting scared, he says, well, what's troubling the king? What's the king's problem? Maybe this is an opportunity for me, for God, to help Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes.
And with that kind of an attitude, he moves into mode 2, because they give him the time, they give him the opportunity, the king does. He moves into mode 2, let's have a prayer meeting. Because Daniel doesn't know what the plan is.
And I love the way that Daniel 2 and verse 18 describes the approach of Daniel and his 3 friends to the Lord. It says that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven. Daniel and his friends have a view of the character of God that is just beautiful. They don't see God the way the pagan nations see God, as a vindictive tyrant and a micromanaging control freak kind of ruler. Daniel thinks of God and says, God is the kind of God who with tender mercies we can call upon.
Amen.
We can get on our knees before this God, tell him of our needs, and he will hear our prayers and be eager to answer our prayers.
And let's clarify something here, Ty, for our viewing audience, to make it very, very clear. Daniel and his 3 friends are no better than anybody else. They're no better than the wise men. They are humans.
Yes.
But the point is that they are humans who see God in a different way than the others do. And they reach out to God, desiring mercy from God. In fact, anyone can do that. And what we found here, what we find here is that initially, it says, verse 18, he is seeking mercies from God that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Yeah. Even in Daniel and even in believers, there are these selfish aspects of our nature that are present in our approach to God. They're perishing, but we need to pray that we wouldn't perish with them. But you know what happens when God's mercy is revealed? You know what? When God sheds light and truth, when God gives us more of an understanding of who He is and what He's doing and how He's orchestrating things, you know what happens? Verse 24, therefore when Daniel went in unto Arioch, this is after he gets the understanding of the dream and he praises God and thanks God, it says, when he goes into Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon, he went in and he said thus unto him, destroy not who?
The wise men
of Babylon. The wise men of Babylon.
Yeah.
The wise men of Babylon. You see how the love of God and the mercy of God actually eradicates every vestige of selfishness from our hearts, so that even as we are seeking God and following God and believers in God, those aspects of selfishness that are there, even those are diminished by God's grace.
Yeah, we have to remember these were Daniel's captors. Daniel's a slave in a foreign land. Daniel finds himself in a very unpleasant situation. He could very easily adopt an attitude of antagonism against the wise men of Babylon that he has no spiritual agreement with, obviously, and he could adopt an attitude of prejudice and arrogance. He could ask the Lord, hey, God, I want to understand this. Just preserve me and my three friends and go ahead and destroy the rest of them.
Spiritual self-righteousness.
Self-preservation.
All those religions are bad, my religion's good.
Yeah, exactly.
All those denominations are bad, my denomination's good.
Yeah, but it's beautiful.
Who cares about them?
Yeah, it's beautiful here, James, that in verse 24, Daniel shifts his attention to preserving.
How?
Preserving the wise men of Babylon.
Because of the grace of God, because of the mercy of God. This is the key. This is not a natural phenomenon. We cannot be as Daniel was naturally. Daniel, it seems, the hint in verse 18 is Daniel, it seems, is not even necessarily that way. But when more of the mercy and more of the grace and more of the blessing of God come upon us, then more of the self is lost. It's diminished more and more. And it's powerful because you see this as Daniel continues on. You see this as he is giving an answer to the king and an answer to Arioch. You see this as he's brought in before the king. In fact, just in the context of these verses, first of all, Daniel seeks an answer in this prayer meeting. They all pray, and then it's revealed to Daniel, verse 19. And then what does Daniel do? Verse 20, verse 21, verse 22, verse 23. All of these verses are directing us to what Daniel does in response to this. And what does he do? He praises God. He blesses God. He sings God's praises. It's not an issue even of himself anymore. He's lost in this atmosphere of praise and worship to God.
Yeah, it's just amazing as the story unfolds that as Daniel comes before the king, you would think with his life threatened that his number one objective would be to just come straight into the king's presence and immediately give the dream and the interpretation. And it almost looks like he's on shaky ground here, because the first thing that he says, he comes before the king and the king says, you know, are you the one? Are you one of these individuals that can reveal the secret of the king's dream? And Daniel doesn't immediately tell the dream and the interpretation.
No,
he immediately directs the attention to the Lord.
What he does, hold that thought right there. What he does is an incredible revelation of a human being who is infected, saturated with the grace of God. Don't go away. We'll be right back to talk about this.